Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy next schedule to join us today. My name is Megan O'Keefe. I'm a developer advocate here at Google Cloud. I'm so thrilled today to be joined by 4 wonderful panelists to chat all things platform engineering. Raise your hand if this is a topic that is, I don't know, exciting to you, or you're here to, okay, good. You're in the right room. That was mostly that was what I was checking. Awesome. So yeah, would the panelists go ahead and like to introduce themselves?
Evan Wood, Director of Cloud Engineering at Home Depot.
I'm Tim Hansen, engineer on the Backstage team at Spotify.
I'm Dinesh. I'm the staff engineer and tech lead of the platform infrastructure from Mercari.
I'm David Faircloth, Director of Platform Engineering at the Wendy's Company.
Awesome. Great. So thrilled to have all of you here today. I guess I kind of want to start with a very broad, general question. I think we hear a lot about DevOps, platform engineering, these terms that mean different things to different people. I'm curious for each of you, in your organization, what does platform engineering mean right now?
So we've been doing platforms of some form at Home Depot, WebSphere a while ago, PCF for a while. So I think the big shift for us is actually developing our own platforms versus managing and running the platforms as we've done in the past.
Yeah, platform has been around a long time at Spotify. It started years and years ago. We had tons of production incidents one week, and we were like, someone needs to watch after the infrastructure, basically. And that was years ago now. Now we have a huge platform organization. So really, it's an accelerant for us, for the rest of our teams.
Yep. For Mercari, platform engineering is providing secure, reliable, and scalable infrastructure to our developers, and so that they can basically deploy and build and deploy their applications on the platform. Yep.
Platform engineering is actually a pretty new concept for us here at Wendy's. We've, through the years in doing cloud things, you have bits and parts of systems that are owned by different people and different teams. So you have the security and networking, and all the different teams have a little bit of piece of the pie. And what we realized with that is when that happens, nobody really owns anything. So we took this extreme ownership approach with platform engineering, where we have a team that owns the whole stack, soup to nuts. So if it's a networking problem, it's one team's doing that, or security, or whatever it is. With that, we've been able to usher in that DevOps culture of partnership and what that means across the stack. So for us, it really means that extreme ownership and really the implementation of that DevOps culture of collaboration and communication.
Gotcha. Thanks all. Kind of moving more into the sort of how and what. I'm curious organizationally how your platform team is structured. Maybe team size, the kinds of skills you look for in your platform team, and kind of, the domain of expertise.
I have to first say that there are many platform teams at Home Depot. So talking about kind of application platforms, my team, which also handles most of cloud from a kind of governance security perspective, we're about 50 people, about 15 of those software engineers, and then a mix of systems engineering skills to support the underlying infrastructure.
Yeah, at Spotify, we have a pretty big team for our platform organization. It's actually a whole organization, but they look after not only infrastructure, but also developer effectiveness and developer experience. And we've found the need to create even more platforms as we've gone along. So we have a commerce platform that handles payments throughout Spotify. But our real goal is just to make developers faster, whatever that means, whether it's managing the infrastructure for them or providing the tools that they need to do their job more efficiently.
Yep. Same for Mercari as well. So we have a platform division, which is divided into 4 different teams. So platform DX, which is the developer experience, who looks after the developer productivity and experience of our platform, basically. Then we have a CI/CD team who looks after the CI/CD requirements for our users. Then we have platform network team and platform infrastructure team. So both of them looks after their dedicated space. So network space is handled by network team, and cloud infra is handled by platform infra team, which is my team. We also have observability responsibility as well. So the observability for the applications which are deployed on the platform, as well as observability for the platform itself. And on top of that, observability for the observability as well.
We take a lot of the same approaches that Tim was talking about, developer productivity, time to market for applications and those types of things. But we also, from a team size perspective, do a two pizza box team. We're pretty big fans of teams of 6 to 8 people that can be fed by 2 pizza boxes, that they can remain small and nimble to do what you want to and achieve what you want them to without the whole analysis paralysis aspect to it. You get too many smart people into a room and you kind of get analysis paralysis going on, and we try to stay away from that by keeping our teams small and nimble.
Gotcha. Thank you. Sort of going off of that, what I'm curious about is kind of the interactions between teams. So you mentioned some of you have multiple platform teams that have to work together, and then of course there's the interface between the platform teams and their stakeholders, all of the application developers and analysts and all the people that they're serving. Can you talk a bit about how that works within your org and maybe some challenges you've had?
Sure, that's where most of my time is spent. So yeah, I think that first and foremost, and I think people can relate, is getting cyber on board early, and partnering heavily with their cyber team. And they're huge supporters at this point. They look to the things, we make sure that the latest cyber goodness is baked into the platform, and then they're comfortable pointing teams to the platform to use because of that. So then it's relationships with all of the development directors that are out there. And they all have different needs and wants. And so really, we're constantly working with both the developer community and the cyber community to make sure, and the SRE community, to make sure that everything's baked in to meet the needs.
Yeah, as far as teams working together at Spotify, we structured teams under product areas. So if you have a bunch of teams that are looking at the same sort of thing, they're expected to work together, and you can structure that in your org. And there's this whole question of should your org match your technology, basically? So we've looked at that, tried to figure out, how best to structure our teams, and how can we get them collaborating well together.
Yep. Yeah, in Mercari, basically, all the platform teams, basically, they share the release cycle and the release candidates, basically, so that they can create output for our developers. So we follow platform as a product principles. So by following that principle, we would like to deliver platform offerings or platform deliverables to our users who are the developers. And working with the development teams, we basically make use of the user surveys, interviews, to get to know them, what are their problems, how they are dealing with the SDLC lifecycle, the development lifecycle, basically. And we also have started to have dedicated TPMs for our platform group itself. So following the platform as a product mindset. Yep.
Yeah, I think back to what Evan was saying too about collaboration and getting cybersecurity on board and everything like that. It's really that with all of our partners. So the way we've implemented it with the collaboration, working with other teams, is openness. Anybody's invited to our stand-ups any day. Come to it, find out what we're working on, give us feedbacks. We also have weekly touch points with all of our other stakeholder groups like cybersecurity, where we meet with them, or they come alongside and they'll do a couple of sprints with us, those types of things. But with that too, you also have to worry about the unplanned work aspect to it. That all those collaboration points are going to have to it. So we actually run what we call a patrolman. So we actually have one engineer on our team that's dedicated for a day a week that he is going to focus on the unplanned work that comes in. So if we have a developer that has a question, or somebody needs access to something, or how to get started in those types of questions, they just come and hit us up in a channel. Our patrolman's already dedicated to taking that work, and what that allows the rest of the team to do is focus on their deep work and move their cards through. So that's really how we've decided to take that on as a group. Is, we have our state of the platform monthly, we have our stand-ups daily that people can join, but also we have that unplanned work aspect there that we can plan for and make sure that the rest of the team is dedicated for that deep work.
Super interesting. Thanks all. All right, let's dive into some of the nitty-gritty here. So I'm curious for each of you and each of your orgs, what do you use to build your platform? Is it hand-rolled? Do you use open source tools? Do you, use a combination? Do you have multiple platforms? I'm very, very curious.
And I think high level, I think of us at my team managing 3 platforms. One is the cloud management platform. We primarily use HashiCorp stack for that. And we buy using commercial software for a number of years now. The managed application platform we're building is based on GKE. So I think component familiar, but then we're using Terraform to automate everything around it in the project. I also say Google Workflows for an orchestrator. I think in building a platform, you have to have some kind of orchestration. We've adopted Google Workflows, which has been awesome code-based workflow engine to help with that.
Yeah, we use a lot of different technologies. We use a bunch of open source technologies. We run most of our workloads on GKE similarly. We have our own in-house developed developer portal called Backstage, which is now open source. And we made that years and years ago. There was nothing out there at the time that existed that served that need. So it was something we had to kind of invent in-house, and it's something that we've shared out with the open source community now because we love open source. We want to be good citizens. But we use tons of open source tools like Jenkins, Flight, GKE, etc.
Yep. For Mercari, we use off-the-shelf tools. Basically, a lot of our workload is already on GCP. So we use GCP Compute, then Kubernetes Engine. Then we use Cloud Build for our monorepo CI, where we run Terraform inside it. Then we use Cloud Storage for storing our artifacts and logs. Then we use artifacts registry as well, container registry. We are in the migration phase of container registry to artifact registry at the moment. For deployment, delivery, basically we use Spinnaker. Then we also started to use Argo CD. So for that as well, we are in the middle of migration. Then we also have self-hosted GitHub runners, which is the custom build solution inside our platform group. Then we have secure CI that we call it. So that is actually based upon the cloud build, and we run Terraform inside it. We also have temporary access management. We follow the zero-touch production principle, where we don't allow by default access to our service developers. So if they want to have access, they can basically quickly go ahead and submit a workflow for temporary access, which will be granted immediately after approval by the owner team. And it is time bound, so it will be revoked after a certain time. Yeah, that's it.
We take the same approach. One of our platform principles is prefer service offerings where available and appropriate. So we choose to, if there's an open source tool out there, let's go look at that and use that if at all possible. There's certain times that that's not going to work, so we'll go and use a tool that we have to pay for. The only time that we build stuff in-house is if it's not available out there already yet, or if it provides a competitive advantage for us. So those are the only 2 times that we'll actually build it in-house ourselves, but we typically try to prefer those open source toolings. I mean, we're Backstage fans. Love it, it's a great tool. If you haven't checked it out yet, go check it out. There's a plug for Tim. But yeah, that's how we decide to approach everything is platforms are really just a big old puzzle, and you have to be able to find the right puzzle piece that's gonna fit into it to give you what you want, and so it's creating those integration points. But it's back to another platform principle of automation too, of you need to automate all the things, and that's really where the key aspects come in, is go and identify what your tools are going to be, and you spend your time automating it so your developers don't have to worry about those aspects.
Gotcha. Nice. Well, all of y'all mentioned a bunch of interesting GCP products and open source tools, which is very interesting to me. I want to come back to that. Before we do, I'd love to hear from each of you about kind of the core features in your internal platform. So, in a tool like Backstage, right, you've got tech docs and and self-service and software catalog. What would you say are maybe the top 2 or 3 features in your platform, and kind of what is at the core of what you're building for your devs?
So, and to go back to self-service, which is really the difference between just providing automation and providing an experience for our developers to get what they need with as little friction as possible. We spend a lot of time working on self-service. We're not using Backstage, but I like it. Because we started about a couple years ago building our own portal. And so that was a tough decision to do. But I think that when you look at a lot of the tools, the open source tools and commercial tools, one of the things that's lacking is a great self-service option that meets Home Depot's needs where we are. And so we knew we were going to have to customize, and so we went on that adventure, and it's worked out pretty well so far. But on self-service, product mindset, I'd say, is changing even my own developers from thinking about just providing a good script or a good set of automation, but to really thinking about our developers as customers that we have to serve and what their needs really are, and then making the interface in a way that's good for a developer, and put a lot of focus on that. So I just say for platform engineering in general, it's the product mindset for us that really helps us. So the technology selections are important, but making sure that it's knowing who your customer is and building that self-service option is really the key to it for us.
Yeah, definitely echo some of those sentiments. We always treat developers as customers in our platform organization. And we've even had, marketing teams marketing things internally, because you need to treat engineers as a customer, especially at Spotify when we're so autonomous. You can't just dictate the teams will use your platform no matter what, There's a lot of freedom there. But the core features, I'd say, of Backstage anyway, are not just a software catalog, but a software graph that tells you how all of our software is interconnected with each other. And our goal is really to make developers able to grasp and understand the software ecosystem at Spotify. So not only the stuff that you work on, but the stuff that's in a whole other part of the company, you should be able to go and read documentation, understand the services. So the software graph is a big deal, as well as software templates for spinning up new things. We have search integration across everything because you need to be able to quickly find things. And Tech Docs, you mentioned, is our solution for technical documentation that stays up to date a little more naturally than writing it off in some disconnected wiki somewhere.
Yep. I think for us as well, it is the same. So it's kind of a common pattern to have self-service templates and the interface that we provide to our developers. So for us as well, our interface is mostly based upon the Terraform modules. So we created Terraform modules on top of the Terraform native resources that we can create with Terraform. So that's the interface. We provide just a small template variable file, which is HCL based. TF file to our developers, and they can just quickly set the variables. And once they set the variable, behind the scene, entire Terraform code is generated for creating or configuring the cloud resources for them. So that's about the GCP part. For the Kubernetes part, we have fully migrated to having Q language-based abstraction. So we don't let users write YAMLs anymore. So Q language helps us to do dynamic validation for YAMLs, and they can easily set certain variables, and behind the scene, the entire Kubernetes YAML files will be generated for them. So for us, the topmost that we are proud of is the self-serving templates and the interface that we provide to our users. Yep.
Yeah, same for us. It's the automation aspect that you can bring to it. So when you have an application deployed, you know that in every environment it's going to be the exact same, bringing that item potency to the SDLC. As part of that, our core and best product offering that we're really proud of within our team is The aspect that the developers don't have to worry about the infrastructure. When they're deploying an application, they give us a manifest file that says, I need public ingress to it, I need a database, I need a cache, whatever that looks like. They can give us all those details in the manifest file. When that's put in through the pipeline, it's all automatically created. So they don't have to worry about the user provisioning to go and talk to the database or any of that. It's all automatically built for them as part of that. Another number two, I guess, for us would be around our documentation, as we talked about. We're big on write it in one spot and then have it consumable for the world. So we try to track all of our Git repos where that's our source of truth for documentation, and then we use tools like Mark to push it up into where our document store is. So we can actually have that all Git-based, all of our version history right there, and then we have our automation tools to actually publish that out so people can consume that. But they don't have to worry about going and updating it in 12 different spots or, oh, this documentation is now out of date because it's sitting right next to the code.
Each of you has brought up GKE a couple of times and kind of building platforms on top of that, abstracting. I'm curious if for each of you, what have been some challenges, or I guess, how do you pick the right levels of abstraction? So for example, GKE has clusters, namespaces, pods. These may be familiar to some of us in the audience here. What do you expose app developers to? How do you decide? And have you had to kind of change your approach at any point with GKE?
I'll go ahead and take this one first, Evan, because you've been going first every time, and that's just not fair. Yeah, we constantly struggle with that with our teams. It's talking to your developers, talking to your clients, because that's really who our customers are. So working with them on what they want to be, what they want to care about and do, and what they don't want to. So it's really that line that you have to constantly talk, and that's part of the collaboration aspect of, here's what we implemented because this is what we think you might want. So let's work on that and see if that's really working for you and what needs to change with that. So we're constantly having those feedback loops with them and changing our approach with it depending on what's good for the development team at the time and what they no longer care about, because what they cared about 2 years ago, they don't necessarily care about anymore. So we'll go ahead and create those abstraction layers on top of that as much as they want and need.
I'd say our cloud model up until recently has been what I'd call ad hoc, and we have over 1,000 GCP projects, and teams can spin up their own GKE today. So I could tell you our bin packing does not look good across the enterprise, right? So I think the shift we're taking with platform is moving to basically namespace as a service. So the self-service is to receive a namespace, we call it tenant, and then we wrap everything around that's needed for the developer. And so one of the hard things is abstracting away the project view, right? So we're gonna have a cluster that's gonna be multi-tenant, but we don't necessarily want our developers to be able to see everything that's in the project. So we've had to build kind of our own context around once you own a tenant, we then have to track all the assets through tagging associated with that tenant. I know there's teams inside of Google working on making a solution for that available. But that's one of the biggest challenges. One, abstracting away from the project, which is too much information for a developer in most cases, to just deploy an app. And then really focusing on the namespace tenant in GKE as opposed to handing out clusters with one app per cluster in the worst case scenario.
Yeah, definitely echo both of those things. We have one team at Spotify that manages all of our clusters. They're multi-tenant clusters. And like Dave said, what does the developer need to know? We've kind of abstracted most of that away. We don't want all of our developers to be experts at Kubernetes. That's just not a good use of their time. So we have central teams that manage those and make it easy for teams to deploy to Kubernetes without having to know where the clusters are, exactly what they want. They just say, I want to be in these regions, send it away.
Yep, I think it is same for us as well. So we have a dedicated team, developer experience team, who looks after the abstraction layer of our platform. They continuously do the user surveys and interviews to understand what are our users' requirements. When we started with our platform, we also had the same question, like what to abstract, what not to. And the basic, what we did is we created a basic abstraction for our platform, and for rest of the customizations or the custom requirements that we used to get from users, we used to allow low-level configuration and customization to our developers. Then over the period, we started to review what are the common practices or what are the common requirements that we have from users, and start to basically create abstraction on top of that, and then basically help them to migrate to this new abstraction. So over the period, we have realized that platform engineering for us is started to be migration engineering. So we have to do the migrations a lot while keeping the abstraction in our mind, and basically having indicators for developer productivity and developer experience. So as much as possible, how we can speed up and accelerate the process for our developers. So keeping that particular in mind, we started to do the user survey, create the abstractions, do the migration. So that's how we do.
And I'll add to that, it's a slippery slope. Whenever you start abstracting too much, then people are like, well, I don't have any visibility in anything. How do I know what's going on, and those types of things? So when we do those types of things, we try to make sure that the way our pipelines run, what the developers can see, they can run locally on their own machine too. So there's a lot of value in creating your own CLI tool, for instance, that you can actually hook all your integration points into. That also allows quick and easy technology exit ramps. Where your developers can go in and grab the CLI tool, they can start running it, exact same commands, and get that feedback directly on their machine. But also if you have a new technology you're introducing or you're changing out or anything, you do that in the CLI tool, and all the developers are getting that immediately, and they can have those faster feedback loops and kind of dig in a little further. So it's definitely that slippery slope, because there's some developers that they want it all. They want to be the masters of Kubernetes. Then you have others that are like, whoa, I write Java and that's all I want to do. And so it's really that talking to your customers, identifying what they want.
Gotcha. Great points. I guess, Dinesh, you bring up a really interesting point about sort of heterogeneous infrastructure. In some cases it might be all GKE all the time. In some cases, you might have a bunch of legacy infrastructure, bringing up the dev keynote from earlier. I guess in the audience here, raise your hand if you're kind of dealing with multiple types of infrastructure underlying. So maybe a mixture of greenfield, brownfield, legacy, new. Yeah, a lot of us. And the pain can be real. I'm curious for all of you, when it comes to dealing with different types of infrastructure, maybe dealing with many GCP and other cloud products at a time, what have been some learnings that you've had, or maybe some things that you did that maybe if you went back you would change in kind of your implementation? It's a kind of a loaded question. So.
You want to take that first?
Sure, I could go after that one. So Spotify is mostly on GCP. But we've acquired some companies that use AWS. So now we're in a multi-cloud situation like many people. And the thing we've tried to do is to abstract that a little bit. And we've been able to use our developer portal to do that. So if your build runs on AWS or GCP, it still looks the same. And if you move from one team to another, you have the same interface that you're used to looking at. Now that requires a little bit of investment in your platform team, kind of creating these tools and these abstractions. And like Dave says, there's always developers who want the nuts and bolts. So you have to kind of toe that line a little bit, make it easy, but still possible to do powerful things if you want to. Yeah, that's a little bit of an answer.
So we have many collections of different tools, stacks, and so I think looking at the future, it's how do you build something people want to come to and solves problems and easy to come to, right? I mean, we spend a lot of time figuring out how can we do things for developers. There is the trade-off then that they don't understand necessarily what they're getting, so we have to provide a good orientation on the other side of it. But I think it's really about building something they can come to and move to, as opposed trying to retrofit or fix everything that's legacy is not possible, and there's not enough time in the day. So,
yeah, I think abstraction or the interface actually really plays a key role here. So if you have an abstraction behind the scene, what technology or what vendor you use hardly matters actually. But of course, you have to have that much rich abstraction on top of it. And of course, the vendors that you're going to choose need to have the same capabilities behind the scene. For example, auto-scaling or automated resource management. So if the different vendor you are choosing does not have that kind of capabilities, you're going to have to basically change that abstraction or do some hacking over there.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020. You're going to do things, you're going to fail with it. You wish, oh man, I wish we wouldn't have spent so much time on that or something like that. The way we approach that, we have terrific leadership that they always push the art of the possible for us. What's actually possible for us to do and innovate in those types of things, which allows us to not be afraid to make decisions and go down a path, as long as we're sticking to our guiding principles. We're very heavy on technology exit ramps. So even those times that we've made a decision of, hey, we're going to go do this, and we're going to implement it this way, and it didn't turn out how we wanted it to, we're able to exit off that technology in a pretty seamless manner without our developers being impacted. And it's just our engineering team from the platform side that actually even knows about it at that point. So I really wouldn't take any of that away or redo any of it, because those are all learning opportunities for every person on our team and in the company. So I find value in those failed attempts at things just as much as the successful ones. So I wouldn't take away any of them.
Gotcha. Awesome. I guess, Evan, you bring up something that I think is quite important, which is, you can build a portal, but the developers might not come. Or you can enforce it, but then you might have devs who go off and build their own. How do you measure the success of your platform internally? So do you have metrics that you're looking to move? What's the needle you're trying to change? How do you solicit feedback? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, first I'll say, and you mentioned leadership. We have incredibly supportive leadership, and it hasn't always been the case. It's been an evolution getting to this point. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing if it was just me screaming into the wind every day. It wouldn't work. So we do have very supportive leadership across the board on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say at Spotify, we have kind of this famous culture of autonomy, and we couldn't, as a platform organization, dictate, like, this is what you're going to use. It just wouldn't have worked. So what we had to do was to involve all the teams, basically to distribute the ownership of our platforms and treat them as products, as Dave said. Our developers are our customers, and we need to make them happy. So it's not just a matter of having this monopoly and having a captive audience because they're forced to use your stuff. It's more like you need to build it in a good way. You need to make sure developers are happy, that you're solving their problems. So we do a lot of qualitative surveys. So we survey our developers quarterly, ask them about all the tools that they use to make sure that we're meeting their needs. And we also look at quantitative measures, like pushes to production or number of incidents, things like that, to make sure that we're heading in the right direction.
Yep. At Mercari, actually, honestly, we are not doing good work around this. We measure some quantitative metrics, the famous DORA metrics, basically. So like lead time or the change failure rates or the deployment frequency, availability, SLO metrics, basically. And on the other hand, as he said, qualitative metrics, for example, satisfaction of our users. Then we try to get that with user feedback and interviews, basically. But it's up to the developers or the people you are talking to, basically. You're not going to get the same feedback or the honest feedback all the time. So it's really hard to basically get honest feedbacks around that part. So that's just about the qualitative user satisfaction. But we really want to solve or improve the developer experience and productivity. From that perspective, platform is one of the area that we are providing where we would be able to increase their productivity. Other parts are basically their cognitive load on our developers and the flow state. Basically, they have to do context switching for different kinds of things. So these are the different metrics that we can use for increasing the developer productivity. But for the qualitative metrics, basically, we are not doing a good job. But for the quantitative DORA metrics, we have those. Yeah, we make use of those.
Yeah, we use our patrolmen a lot for things like that unplanned work aspect, because what happens with that is it's no longer DMs to somebody or a one-off email or anything like that. We actually get them in our channel all the time that are publicly visible to everybody. So we can pull our metrics on how are we doing from this perspective, how many requests we're getting and things like that, and where our unplanned work is coming from. All of our developers are in our stand-ups. We're in their stand-ups. So those feedback loops are about as tight as they can possibly be. So we're getting feedback daily from that. But from a platform side, and really an entire digital development side, is we look at the DORA metrics. That's something that we've been trying to look at more this year. If you guys haven't had a chance, go down to the booth, DORA metrics, talk to Nathan Harvey. He's wonderful. They got a lot of great stuff that they're working on there. And that's how we really look at it, is what is our time to release a change? What does that look like? How are we speeding up or getting better in those types of things, and really grading ourselves pretty harshly on the quality of software we're delivering, the quality of platform we're delivering, and where our trouble points are. So having something like DORA metrics to be able to help create that bench line for us has been hugely helpful.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. All right, I've got one more question here. Let's look ahead to the future a little bit. So, platform engineering, take it what you will. It's not like building of a platform is new, but we're definitely in what feels like a bit of a hype cycle with this topic. Looking ahead in the next year in your organization, what are some initiatives or some things that you would like to improve or change about your platform, and/or where do you see the ecosystem headed? So, kind of more broadly.
And going back to metrics first. My biggest one right now is we've got 3,800 apps on PCF we need to move off. Now, whether they move to the new platform isn't a requirement, but they need to move off of it. So 3,800 to 0 is the biggest metric I work off. But we've got a full-time product manager, net promoter scores, because we do surveys as well. So really getting the feedback is important. The future, really what we're launching now is our future. So we're very much continuing in the journey. Building a managed application platform that abstracts everything away is pretty ambitious. So I think with tools like Backstage and some of the other helpers out there today, there's a lot of possibilities on the front end portal side. But really figuring out how to get those abstraction layers right and making sure the developer has a good experience is going to be the continued focus.
Yeah, I'd say we have two efforts at Spotify. One is called defrag, like the old Windows tool, basically trying to reduce software fragmentation at Spotify, because we have too many technologies, and that doesn't allow us to build an effective platform, So that's one effort, and at the same time, we're expanding the tools that we use. So we have AI, ML, these new areas that we're investing in that themselves need a platform because they're still new and maturing. So we've developed like a sophisticated ML platform. We're looking at different types of platforms that we need to expand to. And we're looking at how AI can actually help the platform itself, like summarizing code reviews or providing suggestions for users of our portal, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it is pretty much same for us as well. So for Mercari, we really want our platform to be a way to increase developers' productivity, and we are basically heading over how we can increase developers' productivity and enrich or reach developer experience. So platform is one of the way, but on top of that, we will be creating the abstractions so that they're going to have to make less changes or just set some of the variables or make use of developer portal basically. So that part basically we will be putting a lot of efforts on so that we can increase the developer productivity. And maybe one of the ideal state that we are looking forward is to having a platform as a service, which is going to be the internal. But we are not yet sure that's going to be the solution for us, because of course that also has downsides, kind of abstraction we can have or the customizations we can have. So that actually has problems, platform as a service. But if you do the user surveys or understand your users really well, you can have the required abstractions and have platform as a service for your internal users. So that's where we are heading.
Man, we made it like 37 minutes without saying AI. That's got to be a new record for these breakout sessions.
We all needed a bit of a break. Sorry, guys.
No, I think that's a very appropriate piece of where I see platform engineering going is what does this AI look like in the new world with platforms? Platform engineering is already a new enough terminology that not everybody's doing, and so that's just going to put another spin on it of what those look like going forward and what those teams and structure needs to look like. If your developers aren't having to write as much code and those types of things, and really how that's going to implement there. For us internally, I really see that next evolution is just the continuing of promoting what platform engineering is. As everybody knows here, when you try to make changes like that, the culture is always the hardest part to try to change and go through. So it's really just continuing to talk about what it is and what it's doing and setting up that community of practice better. We have a terrific data platform team that they do some pretty amazing stuff on that, and it's coming together with that community of practice and identifying how we can get those synergies between each other and figuring out how we can build on what they've done and vice versa and everything. So that's really where I see it going internally here at Wendy's.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you all so much. Right, so we're running out of time here. I just want to give a huge round of applause to our 4 panelists for answering these questions. Thank you. And I just want to, shout out, I think this is a nascent space. There's tons of interesting conversations to be had for sure. If you scan this QR code, there is a recent blog post, from GCP covering some ideas around platform engineering. I would encourage you, if you haven't checked out the What's New in CI/CD talk, it's but a piece of the platform engineering story, but it's a really great talk, and there's a repeat of that tomorrow. If you have questions, we'll try to, hang off to the side here. I want to thank you all so much for your time. Please enjoy the rest of your Cloud Next. Thank you.